Welcome to the podcast where we take a deep dive into the stories behind construction business leaders. We will share how they got started, how they found success, and the lessons learned along the way. I'm your host, Eric Fortenberry. Welcome to Builder Stories. Welcome back, everybody. I am so excited today. I have got Phill and Heather Oddo from Closer Look General Contracting. They're located in Clayton, North Carolina. Really excited to have this power couple on the show. Welcome to Builder Stories.
Thank you. We're glad to be here.
Thanks for having us here.
Yeah, so why don't you kick us off with a little bit of background, maybe we even start with how did y'all meet? And then how did you get into construction and what led you to start a construction business together?
Well, Heather and I met on a dating site, and we like to joke around and say that we were a hookup gone miserably wrong.
Because we're still together 10 years later.
Yeah, we met and we just clicked from the get-go. I started Closer Look back in 2005, originally doing foreclosure services, and then it grew into a design build company. A lot of things happened between those two milestones. How about your perspective?
Yeah. And then my background is completely different. I have my degree and my training is in mental health and substance abuse counseling. And when Phill and I met back in 2015, I was working for a managed care health insurance company. I was just a worker bee. It was not inspiring work by any means, but it was steady and allowed me to do what I needed to do. And over time, with some things that maybe Phill will jump into here in a few minutes, but some things that happened with the business where I call it we now, I'm so used to saying we, where he was really at a point of, do we shut the business down? Where do we go from here because of some major setbacks? And I think that combined with the fact that he saw that I wasn't super inspired and he saw some capabilities, I think that, things that I could do well that maybe weren't his strong suit. He said, why don't you come on board with the company? And I thought that was a really out there idea because I thought if the company is already struggling, how's it going to pay another salary? But, here we are 5 years after that transition and, we're making it work. So it's been a journey.
Better than making it work.
Yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely.
that's great. So Phill, back in 2005, what inspired you to start the business to begin with?
I got into construction pretty early. I can remember when I was 6, sitting in the back seat of the car. Now we're talking 1980 at that point, right? So we didn't wear seatbelts and all that stuff. And I remember crawling into the front seat and telling my mom that I'm going to build her a house someday. And here we are. We do customer models, design, build, remodels, renovations, new construction. A lot of things happen between then, but I did go to vocational school through high school, got a degree in college in construction technologies, then went on and got my bachelor's degree in construction management. Just knew that I didn't want to continue to work for other people, wanted to do my own thing. So,
awesome. So did you end up building your mom that home?
No.
Not yet.
Not yet. She's gone now. So
I'm sorry.
Won't have the opportunity.
So you first started it though, because you didn't want to work for someone else. You wanted to be your own boss, be an entrepreneur, kind of had that natural sort of that itch, that desire to start it. What were your first projects like?
Now, when we started, it was doing mostly handyman stuff through the housing crisis. So I started in 2005 doing home inspections and then went full-time sometime around 2007, 2008. And I really didn't like doing home inspections. And in 2007, 2008, you can remember the housing crisis, the financial crisis. I got into doing foreclosure services for bank-owned properties and did pretty well with it, but that was more business to business. There were systems and processes that were in place by the banks. We just had to follow their protocol. We did well through that process. I enjoyed the work. We had great subcontractors, but they were all unit priced subcontractors. We just dictated what we were willing to pay. They would come in. We could fill them with work through such a difficult time, and everybody was really kind of happy. Fast forward to 2017, wondering why things aren't going so well. Turns out that we suffered quite a bit of embezzlement from our office administrator. So that was my sister, actually. So decided to prosecute from there. And that's what Heather had mentioned earlier about, the difficulty. Started the recovery process with that through much debate. Do we shut the business down? Do we keep going? I just couldn't see giving up. It was just something that I thought was very important to prove to myself I can do this and I'm not a quitter. And we started to gain a little bit of stability, and I kept asking Heather because I just saw her dying on the vine at her old career, her job. Just 4:00 would roll around and she'd hit that key at 4 on the dot to log out of work and get on with her life, the things that she really had passion for. So after much persuasion, convincing that we could do this and make it work, she came on board in 2020. A lot of funny stories just from her first day on. I mean, we were stuck in the mountains, missed a flight. We were about 3 days late. Her first day of work, it was as though the company was shut down because that's when COVID was in effect.
Right.
And, so she left a very secure, well-paying position and came to work together with me to a company that seemed as though on her first day was non-existent. So do you want to share some of your experience with that?
Yeah. I mean, I already knew that I didn't know what I was doing because I didn't have any experience in construction other than a Habitat for Humanity bill that I participated in for one day, which I actually really did enjoy. No business background. I knew that I knew nothing, and he knew that I knew nothing. But yeah, like he said, you coming in, it was September of 2020. So COVID was in full swing by that point. We'd gone on a trip. The office administrator had made the unilateral decision, since she had COVID, that she was going to send everybody home and shut down. And that's when everything was 2 weeks. It was the 2 weeks at home. That was the protocol for COVID back in 2020. And when they did that, they neglected to, let anyone know that nobody was going to be coming out to work on their projects, that nobody was going to be coming out for, their estimate appointment. I mean, we just vanished off the map. We couldn't get into any of our voicemails because she had changed all the passwords. I mean, it was as bad of a first day as you could imagine. Other than I didn't get fired on the first day. I mean, I guess that would make it worse. But yeah, so it was just, there was nowhere to go but up. But I knew that it was sink or swim at that point. So
what did I tell you when you would ask me, we can't get into this account?
Everything I would ask. I think for probably the first 6 months, I would say, how do I do this? Or how does this work? And his answer was always, figure it out. And that was the most frustrating answer that I could have received. And I thought it was dismissive. And this is one of the part of the magic of being a couple and working together. I was just like, why is he just saying figure it out? And then over time, I learned that it was that he also didn't know, and he trusted that I had the ability to figure it out. And so I kind of joke that, on my gravestone, hopefully many, many, many years from now, it will say she figured it out, because that's what I do.
Awesome.
So yeah, and that was that. You hit fast forward to when we join RA and we go through disc testing and all of these aspects that culminated in that recovery from the depression, the embezzlement, all of the things that were experienced in that process. And reading Traction by Gino Wickman, they've got this visionary and integrator. And there was something that I identified in Heather where she was just there was no, she was all business. There's no goofing around. I'm on a mission. I'm going to get things done. Later on, discovering that, there's something called a visionary and an integrator. And I'm a big picture thinker. I've got a lot of ideas, and a lot of those ideas escape me. But when I do manage to retain those ideas, those thoughts, I go to Heather and she really figures out how to implement, how to integrate, how to process, systemize, um, and set those ideas into motion.
Hmm.
That's awesome. Now, I'm heartbroken to hear it was your sister that was embezzling from you. I'm just curious again to maybe help others. How did you identify it, or like when you think back, like were there red flags that might have alerted you earlier, or like like because I hear this story all the time. I've never heard a sister. I've probably heard maybe I've heard some family, but like how would you advise others to make sure that they're doing their best that they can to prevent that from happening from them? I mean, obviously, a bad actor who's going to try to do something like that is it can be very hard to prevent. You got bad people out there, but like, what advice would you give for others to try to make sure that doesn't happen to them?
Sure. Before any advice, um, no need to feel sorry. I don't know that I would have moved if I didn't get uncomfortable. So I wouldn't have taken action towards improvement if this hadn't had happened. I just look at it like it was a very expensive education.
That's a great way
Um,
to look at it.
with regards to red flags, yeah, there were all kinds of red flags. Having difficult conversations wasn't something that I was well versed at that point, approaching those type of conversations. So, there was a lot of growth that came from that aspect of it. Just, hey, look, I'm noticing these things. Can we talk about it? Help me understand where this money is going. But, those red flags were continuous that, again, I'm a big picture thinker. I didn't understand the processes that would go on with the financials. I didn't even understand how to read a balance sheet or a profit and loss. Um, so let alone how to properly job costs. So I was getting snowed through the whole process. And well, we're making money on these jobs. Where is it going?
Hmm.
And I just didn't was ill equipped to have the conversations that were necessary to really get to the root of it, or to want to make the waves in having conversations with the family and suggesting that there may be something unsavory going on here. So,
Mm.
um, lessons learned, and that's a lot of what we focus on and how we've systemized and generated processes for the company. Just anything from sales to financials. I mean, we're actually working on a big commitment with a total and complete financial overhaul from AR to AP to banking, et cetera, right now.
Hmm. And I would say, a lot of what I heard, and I have heard from Phil over, since that took place, is trust and verify. Because I think the piece of it that was in place is, he and his sister were really tight all their lives, from
Yeah.
small kids all the way through, whenever I met them. So I think that there was probably some blind trust. You just
Yeah.
think this person has your back.
Yeah.
And so any of the red flags that came up, she was quick to be able to explain them, so there was always an explanation. And he was, being a big picture thinker, and also being he was managing production at that time. So he was out in the field, he was checking jobs, he was doing all these things, and thinking, okay, well, she's got it under control. She'll take care of it. And so, trust and verify has been a huge part of everything that we do now. And I say this all the time, but I have to give Phil a ton of credit for being able to now put as much trust in me as he has. After what he's been through, I think a lot of people would be like,
Hmm.
I'm not trusting anybody. I'm not going to let anybody else be able to sign checks, anything like that, and the fact that he has reposed so much trust in me as we've, sort of resurrected the business over the past 5 years, just, speaks volumes, and makes me dig in even more, and want to just always do right. Not that I wouldn't anyway, but I think there's that really, is a lot of the foundation for why we work so hard together as a team.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And again, I mean, I hear it often. I mean, it's you got someone really great at their trade who ends up starting a business, and it's like if you're only running one job at a time, there's kind of it's not high dollar amounts. Like it's a little bit easier to sort of keep a handle on it, even without having a super in-depth understanding of finance and accounting and bookkeeping and all that. But like as you scale and as you start to have more success, this is where that opportunity for things to sort of spiral out of control can really happen very quickly. And without having an owner and someone who's very in tune with the financials and the bookkeeping, it is easy to sort of just assume we can delegate that out to someone else who that they're the expert, they know, they'll make sure it's all good. But I think it is like a really important lesson that, like, regardless what your role is in the business, I mean, at the end of the day, like, the owner needs to be in tune with where is the money going, follow the cash flow, just make sure that things tick and tie. And that's where this, like, checks and balances, like, just because you trust your bookkeeper, you trust whoever it may be, like, there should always be that second person looking over and saying, does this all make sense, does this all look right? Because a lot of times if you would have kind of taken a little bit of time, or had them even walk you through things, like, you might have spotted something that might have led to, well, wait, how is that? Or that doesn't look right, that wasn't on that job. But like, if you don't take that time to dig in, I think that's where those opportunities are more likely to potentially kind of just go right past you without even noticing.
Without a doubt. Like I said, I went to school for construction management. W- Schools, colleges, they train you how to work for someone else.
Yeah.
They don't train you how to run a business unless you specifically go to school for business. And even there, I think that there's a lot of training to work for someone else. So you really have to have that growth mindset, that mentality that I'm always going to be learning, that I'm always going to be improving. And,
Sure.
that's one huge aspect of it. You said earlier, what advice would you give to other contractors? That's a growth mindset. If you don't have a growth mindset, then figure out how you can derive a growth mindset. Figure out what intrigues you, what portion of the business that you're most drawn toward, and focus on that. And then find a partner, find somebody, find people that you could bring in that fit in that mold of what those core values are, what those genuine, those intrinsic core values are, and how you operate, how you function day to day, and loop them in where they've got some special skills so that they can help you and develop a relationship, focus on that relationship. So
Absolutely. So what did your team development look like over those years, kind of leading up to when Heather joined? Like, at what point did you start to really focus on building out the team to try to help you scale?
that's a that's a great question, because all of these things, with regards to culture, with team, my mindset used to be more set on, this person has the ability, the aptitude. This is a great carpenter, or this is somebody that knows Excel, or this is somebody that can work in QuickBooks. Um, and I, I got Heather and I got a great piece of advice from Eric Jackson,
Jackson Design Build in Seattle.
the previous owner of Jackson Design Build in Seattle. And now it's the Zoutkeys, right? They've purchased it from the Jacksons. But he said, hire for attitude, train for aptitude. It was a mess. I mean, I had people that just had no regard. I had some really great people that I still value to this day, that we still use in subtrades, but it was really a mess. It was a free for all. I always wanted to have a culture, not even knowing what culture was, but I wanted to have this feel where, I'm not breathing down people's necks. And I didn't know how to cultivate that true, authentic culture with the trust and verify, with the systems and processes where I didn't need to breathe down their necks. So it was just a free fall. We really didn't have the systems and processes. It was a mess. We made money by chance.
We did. And I would say that when we really started leaning into those aspects of finding, the right people for our team, not just the right people in terms of their skill or their experience, but the right people who really fit the culture. And that, that hire for attitude, train for aptitude is just, that's like the antithesis, or I'm sorry, that's the epitome of it. That yes, that defines what we've been doing. We just didn't have those words for it. But it was being in Remodeler's advantage and really the awareness of how important culture, team, leadership, all of those things are. Because I think that, just like you said, people will start a construction business because they know about construction.
They're
They're good at,
technicians.
they're technicians, they're good at a trade,
Yeah.
and then that's what they do. And they don't, either you don't recognize or you don't give enough value to these other things like culture, team, making sure the right people are in the right seats. Because you can have a great team member who's just not in the right seat. And then you find that whenever you adjust some of their duties, move some things around, that they just blossom. We have that going on in our team right now.
Yeah. And can I add to that? I mean, Eric, you're somebody that I look up to with regards to what you've developed with regards to your culture. I saw you guys went to a Cowboys game yesterday. You've got a lot of employees in comparison. Um, there's this jargon about culture. What is the culture? Um, if our minds are so set on culture where it's this buzzword, then you don't have that true, authentic culture. Who are you? What are you naturally going to do? How are you naturally going to respond? What are you naturally going to be like? What does your day-to-day feel like? That is culture. Who are we? What are my genuine intrinsic values? That really is what develops culture. And then focusing on the aspects, the details that manifest that intrinsic culture within the team without the buzzwords where we're going to focus on culture. um, we all want to have fun at work, but how do we do that and get the job done?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it starts with defining, what is your mission? What is your value? What are your core values that you believe in, as leaders and as a company, what do you want to represent? And like, I feel like the earlier that you can do that and really flush that out, then it enables you to use it to attract the right people who are also, called to those same things. Because like at the end of the day, like I believe it's very hard to, to pay someone or to train someone to be passionate and to care and to like genuinely want to do good for others. Like you have to find that in these people, but you can't just like think that like just because you pay them a lot, they're gonna like care. Like that's just like that's an intrinsic thing that like when you find those people that truly resonate, with what you're doing and they want to be there beyond the paycheck. I say all the time, like a paycheck and a salary in today's age, I mean, that's just table stakes. Like you got to really figure out how do we actually unlock, these people's potential and motivate them to want to do, to want to achieve the goals of the business. Like, that just comes with like, finding the right people. And I think like you have to take a lot of time to first define what is the right person. What are we looking for?
Right.
What is the role that we need to fill? Because so many times people just wait till they feel overwhelmed and they're like, we need people. And they're just like throwing bodies at problems. And the first person that walks in the door, they hire them and they're like, here, go do this, go sit in this chair. And like, that person very well may not have the right skills, much less the right, attitude and desire, to do good and to be a contributing team member. And so like, I think it kind of comes back to, sort of the origins of like who we are and why we're doing what we want to do.
Without a doubt. Yeah, I think inside that culture that there's a lot of tactics in making connections, um, to build relationships with people. But I agree, it's just finding people who are in alignment. The
Yeah.
paycheck is just really the paycheck. You could go just about anywhere and get that. But to motivate people where they truly and honestly have this motivation to want to perform because they genuinely enjoy the tasks and responsibilities that they've been assigned or privileged to take on within the company because it makes a difference.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned Remodeler's Advantage. I'm curious, like, when did you find that organization? And like, would you say, was that like kind of one of the pivotal sort of transition points for the business where like you started to really like, learn, more about like, the things that you needed to do to take the business to the next level? And how did that all kind of come about for you?
Uh, Luke Dobbins, who he's an RA member, and he's a couple towns over from us. We went to a home builders association social event, and we were talking to him that, hey, we feel like that if we could have a roadmap, if somebody could show us the way, just the formula, that we could be successful. And he looked at the guy next to him who was a previous RA member, and he said, what do you think? Remodeler's Advantage. So he actually introduced us to RA. I think Heather does a great job in explaining what our introduction to RA was.
Yeah. You may have noticed we both started grinning whenever you brought up RA. He's doing it again. Because it was a bumpy road, and yet it was the thing that has made all the difference for us, and for a lot of different reasons. But so we found out about this and we contacted them. We went through, a couple phone calls with
Steve.
their salesperson at the time, who's still there but not in that role. And then we decided we're going to do it. We talked with they put you in contact with a couple of other companies that have been in RA for a while that, have found success. And I remember being on those, Zoom calls with them, just thinking, yeah, but, they're doing great, but I can't imagine that we will ever get there. It just seemed like, like meeting an astronaut, like, yeah, that's cool, but I'm never going to travel to space like you are.
There's definitely a scarcity mindset.
Oh yeah. So, I mean, yeah, that's that head trash, right? But, so then we were like, okay, we're sold. Let's give this a whirl, because we know we got to do something. And of course, when you really need that coaching is when you probably don't have a lot of money to throw at it, because you realize that you're not making money. And so it's a big,
or a lot of
it's a
time,
big
of time
investment.
to invest in it. I mean, the time commitment. And, we went through Jumpstart.
Yep. So Jumpstart was, my figure it out mentality was not entirely engaged at that point, because I felt so out of my element with a lot of the numbers stuff they were trying to teach us. And it was, I think anybody will probably echo this, that it's like drinking through a fire hose at first, because you realize there's so much that you don't know, and everybody comes in at a different point in their business. But for us, it was certainly drinking through a fire hose. And, our first couple of meetings I just was like, no business being there. I was like, I don't even know what questions they're asking me. I don't understand. It really shined a light on how much we needed to learn. But over the years that we've been in there, what I'm realizing as we look back is like, wow, we really have the capability to do this. We need to be able to see other people be successful so that we can believe that it's possible, and to have the support of other people, to have people give you really good constructive feedback because they know, because they've been there, or because they're in the middle of tackling the same challenge and they're experiencing this is what they've tried. So, I would say that the trajectory from when we first started has been pretty steep in a positive direction, which is just, it's amazing. I still have to fight that imposter syndrome sometimes when I go to meetings now and talk about things, because I actually know about them. And sometimes I can't believe that we know these things, or that we've been able to implement these things. So yeah, that was, I would say, the single biggest positive shift for us.
The feedback. Heather mentioned something about feedback. It's not like the first meeting. You get a lot of feedback. You hear a lot of things that you don't want to hear. And I don't know if you have ever experienced a roundtable meeting, Eric, but it's not a meeting unless someone cries. And Heather was that person in that first meeting, and you just feel so defeated because there's so much ground to cover. Again, we get these college degrees, and it teaches us how to work for someone else, not necessarily how to manage a business. So, very, very, very interesting, very, very great decision to go on board with Remodeler's Advantage. Now, there was an acclimation period as well, where getting buy-in from me, I was invested because we were spending money to be there.
Yep.
And we're going to get the most out of this, but we really didn't understand the formula, how it worked with Remodeler's Advantage. And it probably took a couple meetings to really get 100% buy-in from Heather in that process. And I knew that we needed to get buy-in from the two of us if we were going to make it work. So had to exercise some, I don't want to say persuasion, but really some finesse, and hey, this is really the best thing. And I can't do this alone. We have to go at this as a team. And if we're going to go at this and we're going to make the investment, then we really both have to go in 100%.
Yeah. And I think my disc profile probably speaks to that as well, because I need the data.
Yep.
I need the proof. I need I need to know that we can get there and that there are these steps in between to get there. And so I needed to see that for myself. And, but as far as buy-in, we're the ones that sit in those meetings. We're the ones that get on those phone calls. We're the ones that have those connections with other people, not only in Remodeler's Advantage, but in, throughout the industry. Our team doesn't. Our team is here getting the work done. And so sometimes trying to, we come back to them with, here's some more new ideas. And they're like, oh God, here we go again. So really having to sort through what we're going to implement, how we're going to implement it, and how to get them bought in so that they can internalize the value of what we're learning. That can be tough sometimes.
I mean, we've got a list of parking lot issues that we intend to work on at some point, and I'm sure you could relate. That there's a million things that need to be done, and just prioritizing what needs to be done first, what's going to move the needle.
It's interesting. You talked about how, early on, when you first looked at it, I mean, it is an investment, really any coaching, any type group like this, like, there is a real investment that, especially, and probably the people who may need it the most are the ones struggling the most. And so like, figuring out how to come up with the cash and how to justify it and how to like make that, commitment. I mean, it really, to some extent, feels like a leap of faith.
Yeah.
And like to have kind of the skepticism as well, and like unsure. And then you start seeing others and you're like, yeah, like, am I even in the right room? Like these people are so far ahead of me. Like, but it is such a transformational experience. Like, and I see it like, I've got a very unique vantage point, but like, I see it like when people join that group, it's like, it goes for a little while and then bam, like you can like visually see the pull up and you can tell that like something has changed, and I think it's about surrounding yourself with the right people who have, been there, who have done that, who can give you that guidance. Like, because like so many times, like, you don't know what you don't know. And the only way to get that is by having someone come in and share that with you who can help you accelerate and push through and hopefully skip over some of those lessons.
Yeah, that's the way to expedite improvement, is to, follow course for people who have been there and implement their advice. Probably the single most beneficial decision that we've made in the company. Next to that, signing on to JobTread.
Yeah. No, it did. Huge change as far as transparency. Getting back to what we were talking about with the embezzlement and stuff, and we can see everything, and everybody in the company can see everything on JobTread. So that's made a huge difference for us too.
And I mentioned that, it took me a while to get Heather's buy-in. It took Heather a while to get my buy-in because we'd seen so many other, project management solutions that have been out there that they just didn't either fit the bill, or I wasn't the person to do the integration, right? Identifying roles, like you said earlier, between Heather and I, it took us a while to hash out what those roles were and what that looked like. And, and now it's at a point where there's just some minor tweaks that are going on, and that manifests throughout the team. We're going to make these tweaks in your role, your job description. So let me think that up.
Because like a lot of times, I think that same sort of feeling of, being overwhelmed and like, where do we begin and how are we going to get there? Like, a lot of times when people join JobTread, they feel that same sort of sense of like, wow, this seems like it's for much bigger companies and I'm not there yet. And it's like, at the end of the day, though, like it's about kind of boiling it down to what are my biggest priorities, and we got to make a list, and you got to start at the top and you got to work your way through it. And it's like, as you grow, having the tools there, having the support there, the systems there, like where you can grow into those processes. But, again, it's like if you don't know what you don't know, and you don't know what's out there, and you don't know, where you aspire and where you want to get to, it can be very challenging to kind of work through that and understand that, like, look, you don't have to implement everything day one. The key is kind of taking it, one step at a time. You eat an elephant one bite at a time type mentality. But I think it's about showing, where you can go and how you can really take your business to the next level over and over again. But like, you can't skip levels. You got to, work your way through it. And it's about, putting that process in place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We used to try to bite off too many things. And Doug Howard, in conversation with him, he said, hey, look, you guys are on the right path. Just choose 2 or 3 things that you're going to work on.
I think he said 1 or 2. I think
One
he
or
was like,
two,
you
yeah.
guys, you've got a million things and they're all important, but you have to choose 1 or 2 and tackle them and then move on to the next ones. And it's such a simple piece of advice, but it's made a tremendous difference. And I still use it every single day. I have my list of things that are my A priorities and my B priorities and, C priority. And I have to choose what are the 1 or 2 things that I'm going to knock out now, because otherwise it becomes a big muddled mess.
And we use it with our team too. When
Mhm.
we do check-ins with, with our designer, or when Heather does a check-in with Chris, let's pick 2 things.
What's your team look like today?
There are 6 of us total, so we're still really small. So there's Phill and I, and then we've got our financial manager. We've got a project manager, we've got a designer, and then we've got a field coordinator. We used to have in-house carpentry. We've moved to all subs for now. I say for now, but it's working well, so that may be a forever. But I will say with absolute certainty that the 6 people on our team now are bought in. I mean, they really they go above and beyond. And then it's not like we ask them to work extra hours or, deal with clients outside of, evenings and weekends, but they really, you can tell when your people are bought in and they want to do a good job and they want to make sure that they represent the company as well as they can.
How
And
would
even
you
with the
say that
trade
you
partners, working with trade partners that buy into the culture. It's not a perfect formula, but as we integrate different systems, processes, we find out pretty quick who's on board, who's not, and where we need to seek out to find new trade partners in any specified areas, because they're either going to follow the process or they're not. And we can determine pretty quickly.
how would you say you've really fostered that buy-in? Like, how do you know with such certainty that your team is so bought in? And are there things that you do that you feel like have made a really big impact on ensuring that everyone's on the same page working together?
Yeah, that's a really great question. With the buy-in, there's just like you could see red flags when things are going off the rails. You have those key indicators where things are going right. The people are following the processes. People are showing up prepared for meetings. You're having your normal check-ins, and things are going the way that they're supposed to go. People, our teammates are happy to do their job. We've got clients that we're satisfying. That's really how we can tell, if people have that buy-in, because they're following the formula, they're following the process. We've got happy clients, we're profitable, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
Those are pretty much the key indicators that we see. It's not like pulling teeth where, like in the movie Office Space, hey, I'm going to need you to file that TPS report. And, it's just not experiencing those type of things, because it's a collaborative process, right? If I were the expert in everything here, I came to this business and started this business as a technician. So I'm relying on people that have expertise that's outside of my own.
Yeah.
And, if they're playing a part in developing these processes, these systems, then.
Yeah. I think another thing that thinking of that we did is when we really had to go back and whittle down our core values, because we used to, for years, even before I came along there, we had, things like craftsmanship, quality, like things that you will
Integrity.
typically see on, that are just like, I mean, buzzwords in some regard, because we didn't put a lot of thought into them, or, they'd come from a long time ago. So we sat down with our team and we said, write down 3 things on a piece of paper, it's anonymous, that really matter to you in how you do this job, what you want to convey from the company. And so it was an exercise we did it over a couple of team meetings where we collected that information, then we shared it as a group, and then we whittled it down to what we thought were the 3 key things, the most important values. So they were part of that. And the values, the core values that we now talk about, that we share with our clients, are literally from our team. They were the ones that came up with them with us. I mean, everybody participated equally in that process. So, there was that. I think we read a lot of books. Phill and I read a whole lot of books. So,
Yeah.
getting as much on leadership and communication and those kinds of things as we can, and doing things that really try to make sure that we're personalizing. So we start every meeting that we have with wins and learning moments, and everybody knows to come prepared with something. And it's neat to hear, like last week in our production meeting, one of our team members shared that their win is that they feel like they have a team they can really rely on. And like, I got a little misty eyed, I gotta say. I was to hear that, like, wow.
Yeah.
And we've changed something that we've done fairly recently was we changed the way we do our annual reviews or our check-ins. So instead of focusing so much on performance and ratings and that kind of thing, we start that off with we send them questions about a week ahead of time, and they say things like, some really personal stuff like, when you were 6 years old, what did you want to be? What's your favorite movie? Just like to kind of ease into the asking their personal questions. And then we ask them, what's the thing that you're most proud of over the past year?
What's your favorite memory that you've made at Closer Look?
Yeah. And then even some things like, do you feel like you're supported? How could we support you differently? So things where we're really trying to hear from them in their own words, that are not as focused on performance and metrics, although those are important, but are really more focused on them as humans, because we want them to experience us authentically. And we want for them to know that they're working for people who, again, who have their best interest and the best interest of the clients in mind.
Yeah.
I love that. That's awesome. And, again, I think I've heard you mention a couple times, like the importance of these check-ins. And I think that is where, a lot of people don't take the time to just have those real conversations, to communicate with each other, because sometimes you don't know, what someone might be struggling with. And, you just assume that they'll sort of work it out on their own. But it's like, man, if you can just have that real heart to heart, it's such a relief for people to be able to share. And even if it's not even job related, just having that person, that someone they can confide in, that really, cares about them. I mean, that can just be such a huge burden lifted off their shoulders, that then it does enable them to get back to that happy place where they're focused, they're productive, but like it's so important. I think that people do take the time to have those check-ins, do those performance reviews, because like, again, it's like, if you never do that, like, how are you helping people develop and grow? Like, people can't read your mind, like they need the feedback.
Yeah. I mean, just setting priorities. I mean, check-ins, Heather and I have a check-in once a week, but we go for a walk every day and we discuss. And, what is your biggest challenge right now is a common question that I ask every member on our team when I have time with them. When I do a check-in twice a week with our designer. What is your biggest challenge right now? And that may be just prioritizing. That may be, hey, I'm trying to work through this, this, and this. And then, hey, what do you think about this then? If this is an issue, can we go speak to this person and gather information here? What do you think about that? It's very important to see where people are at and get a perspective of what their priorities are, so that if there's a redirect that needs to be made, you can give that. And in the annual reviews, that's a review, right? So you should have already given them feedback. So if you've got an employee that shows up late twice a week, you should be having that conversation that, hey, you know, we agreed that you would be here 10 minutes before start time. Can you help me out here? Those type of conversations. And then if they've got a broken agreement, to bring that to their attention, so that when you do go to your annual review, that you're giving them that feedback, or that you're giving them the positive feedback, the praise that they deserve for doing things right. Because really, I think that's all what we want to hear. Hey, we're doing this right. Hey, the boss only comes to me when I do things wrong. Why don't we go and praise people when they do things right? Hey,
Yeah.
great job.
It's like raising our kids.
Yep.
We both have kids that are college age now, but when they were little, one thing I used to do with my daughters, I had her little marble jar, and I would catch her doing things right, and she would get just little things like that. And I think that it's such a simple concept, but really let people know when, hey, I really like how you did
Yeah.
this, or,
Thank
great
you.
job on that phone call, or whatever it was, not that you're always lording over them and listening to every word that they say, but when you can just throw those little things in, then they know that, okay, they're paying attention, and they know that I'm engaged and I'm working hard for them.
Yeah. So I find it fascinating whenever I get to talk with, married couples and, who are also, working together, business partners. Like, I'd love to hear from you all. I mean, how would you say, like, how have you made this work so well where you can work together, you can live together, you can raise a family together? Like, how do you manage the work-life balance? Is there separation? Do you guys like devote time outside of the office? Or are you always talking about work? Like, how have you all made it work so well, with each other? Because a lot of times I see when people try to work with a family member, it often doesn't work well. So what are the secrets for y'all?
You want to lead that?
Yeah, I mean, I'll say right off the bat that it's not always easy. It's not been, rainbows and butterflies. That said, we've had to learn a lot, and we've had to grow a lot. And I think both of us having a growth mindset just as human beings has helped a lot. I think that if one person in the equation doesn't, if they're rigid, and closed-minded, there's going to be challenges. So, we have that working in our favor, but we've had to learn to have conversations. We've had to learn the best way to start those conversations. For example, when he says to me, "What's your biggest challenge? What can I help with?" is a much better way than saying, "What have you gotten done?" Or "How's this coming along?" Where you just feel like somebody's trying to drive the speed at which you're doing whatever you're working on. Um, the boundaries has been really, really important. I think for the first few years, we lived in another town that was almost 90 miles away. So we were driving 90 miles each way every day. And a lot of the time we were riding in the same vehicle. And so, we'd get in the truck and we'd start talking about work, and we'd drive all the way to work, drive all the way home talking about work, so it was, and that was just, it was just too much. It was like this person that I'm married to and in a relationship with has just become, they just epitomize work, and that's all you focus on. So we really had to learn to, okay, when we're not at work, if somebody wants to talk about something, is it okay to bring this up? We ask each other. And usually the answer is sure, or yeah, just for a minute, but sometimes it's no. And we've had to learn to respect those boundaries, because setting boundaries is useless if the other person doesn't respect them or understand the reason that they're in place. So I'd say that's been a big one.
Just understanding one another
Yeah.
has become a major aspect of that. Just recognizing where our strengths and weaknesses are.
And understanding the disc
Yeah, the disc profile
has helped a lot to understand why we are the way we are.
Yeah. I mean, Heather's a DC, so she decides, and then she wants to take action. And I'm a high I, and I'll talk about things all day. So, I know that when we're done with the check-in, she beelines it right back to her desk because she wants to get things done. It's not about me. It's, but recognizing that, learning about one another, taking a deeper dive, those boundaries are huge. And then, having our own things that we're into. Heather loves to go horseback riding. She loves to visit her horse. I love to mountain bike, snowboard. be in the mountains and do all of that stuff, and giving each other the room that we need to be in our own element is part of it. And I guess that's a boundary as well.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, we have to live our core values in our relationship with each other.
Yeah.
Not just with the business. We have to, you know, understand what's important to each other and really be able to be open minded about that. Um,
And prioritizing the best, the what's going to benefit the relationship, even if there are concessions that need to be given,
mhm.
having humility.
Yeah, believing in one another rather than, I'm sure that as I mentioned earlier in the show, that I imagine it was really hard for him to trust somebody else to come into the business. But over time, he's also had to be able to let go.
Mhm.
These are all the things that were his company that he did himself. And so now as he turns things over to me and I have the autonomy to make decisions about them and implement things and whatever that may be with regard to marketing or, the team or whatever it is, he's had to also propose a lot of trust in me to let go of some
Yeah.
of that stuff. And then there's stuff that I don't want to ask him about. It's not that I don't ask, it's that I don't question, because I know that he has his area of expertise as well. And then I think, just one final thought is that this running the company together isn't the end goal. Our life is bigger than that. And the company is kind of the vehicle that takes us down the road of life. And we have to remember that we got to do something, right? You'd be going to work, you'd be getting a paycheck from somewhere. This is where we choose to invest our time and our energy. And this is our thing that we're growing together. And we have to take time out to celebrate when things are really good. Hey, we got 4 leads just today, or, hey, these people are really happy with this job.
Yeah. Got another 5-star review, whatever. And, be happy for one another as well with our own personal.
Yeah. And remember that we did this together. Like
Yep.
we did this together. And
Yeah.
that's a really cool thing. It's easy to forget.
So it sounds like you've really you really understand each other. You've defined, your roles, your responsibilities, kind of know each other's lanes, know your strengths and weaknesses. Like you've learned how to have really healthy communication, to not sweep things under the rug. You bring it up, you have that close kind of, daily check-ins. I mean, I think those are all great, great things that really go to show how you've been able to build this. I am curious, can you guys both share sort of what is each of your role and how have you kind of divided and conquered here?
So my role is, like I said, I do the marketing. I do anything having to do with systems and processes, basically. I'm involved with the financials, but we have somebody that's their major role is the financials. Um, gosh, am I forgetting anything?
You,
Major?
you, I guess the standard definition or um, role, you'd be a COO.
Yeah, I'm the chief operating officer is what I'm called.
Yeah.
So also kind of like company mom, where something needs to be handled, something needs to be figured out. Okay, go ask Heather, and that's fine because I enjoy doing that.
And I'm more doing the CEO type of aspect. I deal with tip of the sword type of sales aspect where I do the qualification of new leads that come in, get them into design agreements, and then they move along from there. But a lot of what I've been diving into has been the leadership and cultural aspect of the company, just as far reaching as our trade partners, vendors, and then the in-house team, really focusing on what motivates people, staying connected with each and every person that is here, because they're, as the technician when I started, I've got to make sure that things will be carried through the way that they would as if I were doing them myself, only better, because these people are in their specific roles. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun diving into that aspect of it where we really get into those focused roles that are more tied to our natural abilities.
Yeah, that's awesome. Again, I think having such a clear understanding of kind of where everyone's strengths and weaknesses are really helps you guys to complement each other and work together. So that's that's awesome to see. You mentioned earlier that that y'all have spent a good amount of time reading books and studying leadership and things like that. Are there any recommendations that you'd like to share for others who might want to dive into that as well?
There's a ton of them. I'm reading Leading Relationships by Steve McClatchy. He was keynote at Remodeler's Advantage Summit in Boulder this year. I really enjoy that book because it breaks down a formula for scripts and how to approach certain types of conversations. That one's huge for me. I like The 5 Levels of Leadership by John C. Maxwell.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's a book, People Smart in Business, which is a really great book about identifying the different DISC profiles, beneficial ways in communicating with the different DISC profiles. And I know Heather's got a list of her own that she really enjoys. And I'm usually the person that's motivating the listening or reading of leadership books or business books.
He listens to the books while he's out, like working in the yard. So he's always got something on, and then he's like, "Oh, I listened to this one. You got to check it out."
And I do it for fun.
Yeah, he does. And I 5 Dysfunctions of a Team is a great book. Let's see, Radical Candor is a great book, not only about communicating authentically, but also about really helping to find what motivates your people. Let's see. Course Traction was a really important book, and we need to go back and read that one again at a much different
from a different perspective. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
So, but there's a whole list. I mean, if any of your listeners ever want book recommendations, we can go ahead and get our contact info posted. But yeah, always happy to help anybody that's, struggling on any specific topic. Actually trying to start a book club in my micro board because some of the members of my micro board want to focus on leadership, and that's the best way for any of us to learn. And we could just focus on dissecting a book and how we're going to apply some of the aspects of the recommendations.
That's awesome. Well, look, I really, really appreciate y'all coming on and sharing them. Just kind of in closing here, I mean, any final thoughts or advice that you would give to others who are, earlier on, maybe just starting out or, a couple of years in, but aspiring to reach that same level that you guys have got? I mean, what do you wish you would have known, back then when you started or earlier on that now that might help someone else?
Ooh,
for me,
that's a good one, yeah.
Yeah, for me, I would say to cultivate and foster a growth mindset, to keep that mind open and always be learning, be curious. What is it that Michael tells us? How could
Think about how this could be true.
Yeah, how could
So
this
always
be
keeping
true?
an open mind, even whenever you think that, oh, that doesn't apply to me or that's not useful, constructive criticism. Well, how could this be true? So looking at things from all angles.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say for me, and this one is, it's very personal to me, but it is, you don't have to have all the answers. You just have to be able to take that first step, and confidence is built through recognizing that you are capable of success. And that success is not always going to be linear, but just like I said earlier, when we talked to those really successful RA companies at first, and I thought, well, that's real nice. There's no way we could ever get there. Now I'm seeing, how we can get there, because each step where we've had to learn and grow and get uncomfortable has helped me prove to myself that, yeah, I am capable of this. And that imposter syndrome is slowly fading. So yeah, I would just say that you don't have to know all the answers to start.
And I would say in that vein too, don't hire a coach. If you want to work on any specific area, hire a coach. I'd like to give a shout out to our coach, Michael Hodgen. I mean, he's transformed our lives, and Remodeler's Advantage as well. I mean, we are enjoying some of the freedoms that we would consider our wealth, just in our autonomy on the day to day, or just being able to go take a 2 or 3 week trip out west and not have our phones attached to our hips. So definitely a gift.
That's awesome. Well, look, Phill, Heather, I really appreciate you coming on, sharing a little bit of the behind the scenes, how y'all have made it work so well. You clearly are building a great company. You've got a great culture. I love the fact that you guys are really able to live your life every day, working together, loving each other, doing what you're passionate about. Like that is what, this whole living life is about, is about finding ways that you can truly, feel like you are happy and you are making an impact on the world around you. So it's just so cool to see people who really can be such a great role model to everyone else out there. I appreciate all the help that I know that you give to other builders and contractors. Super, super awesome. You guys are doing a great job, and I'm just honored to be be able to be here as your software guy, just fly on the wall, getting to watch you build something. It really is very neat to see the success that you've had, and I can't wait to see where you guys take this in the next 5 to 10 years, because I have no doubt it's going to be really great. But thank you again for coming on and sharing all of this wisdom with everyone.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having us on, and thank you for being such a great role model in how you exemplify all of the great ways that you can run a successful business.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Have a good one. See y'all.
You too. See ya.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Builder Stories. We hope you enjoyed the conversation and gained valuable insights that can help you in your journey along the way. Don't forget to subscribe to the show and leave us a review. And as always, if you or someone you know has a story to share, please contact us at builderstories.com. We'd love to hear from you. I'm Eric Fortenberry, and remember, every builder has a unique story. Keep building yours.